Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Fat Mascara Day. Happy all the things. It's Jen Sullivan. Jess will be here in a second for our interview. But the sunshine is here, so this interview is very appropriate to the sunny weather. But before we get into that, do you like Fat Mascara? Do you like listening to us? I would love if you go over to wherever you listen to us, YouTube. You know, we have a YouTube channel. We have an audio-only version of the podcast, plus video clips there. So YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us, and throw us a review or some stars. That helps other people find the podcast. And maybe I'll read your comment if you leave a comment too. Let me see what we've got today. I'm over in Spotify comments. Oh, we have comments on our most recent episode Jess and I did, episode 575. Oh, this is the one Atlas was on. Listener Julia says Atlas is hilarious. Thank you so much, Julia. And then Bagelmer says, pausing the pod to comment on the device topic. I love a beauty tool. However, they're an investment and you need to know if they'll be worth it for you. Will they save me time, money, provide a great result? Then they're in. I mean, I agree. She goes on to say, personally, I cannot live without my Clarisonic with a super soft brush, my Silk Epilator. I have not heard that word in a minute, guys. Epilator, yes, okay. And I also have a Ferrea Luna cleanser for traveling. I was so sad to see Clarisonic close its doors. They had a truly fantastic product that I hold on to dearly. Okay, so you have multiple devices, and we're out here trying to condense into one device. But thank you for your comment. You too can leave comments on Spotify. Just scroll down after the episode, and there's a little comment bar there. All right, getting into today's episode. So guess what today is? Besides the day the Fat Mascara comes out. It is the second day of Skin Cancer Awareness Month, though of course we should be aware all year long. But to kick it off, we're chatting with Dr. Deborah Sarnoff in an interview that first aired on episode 169 of Fat Mascara. So Dr. Sarnoff is still the president of the Skin Cancer Foundation, but she's so much more, including director of dermatology at Cosmetique Dermatology, the president of the International Society for Dermatologic Surgery, and she's the co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology. She's also co-authored books like Beauty and the Beam, Your Complete Guide to Cosmetic Laser Surgery, and Instant Beauty, Getting Gorgeous on Your Lunch Break. I mean, Dr. Sarnoff, do you take time off? Because it doesn't look like it from your resume. We're so excited to have you back in the virtual studio for a replay of this interview. Let's welcome her in so we can talk about protecting our skin in the sun. Welcome to Fat Mascara.
Welcome, Dr. Sarnoff.
Thank you.
Let's just talk first, Skin Cancer Foundation. What does it do? Why did they make you the president? Why are you here, Dr. Deborah?
Okay, so the Skin Cancer Foundation was founded 40 years ago by my mentor, Dr. Perry Robbins. Perry was ahead of his time. When people were out there laying in the sun and saying the sun is great, you got to get the sun, you need your vitamin D, you should just get great sun, he was saying to himself, he thinks that really the sun can cause cancer. And he specialized in something called Mohs surgery, which is one of the treatments for skin cancer. And back in 1985, I studied with him. I was his fellow. He took one person a year. It was competitive to get to be with him, and I got that honor. So I started to specialize in skin cancer and Mohs surgery, as well as other cosmetic techniques. And so the rest is history because he founded the foundation really 40 years ago. Now, he was president for many, many years, and then 2 years ago, he decided to pass the baton to me because I'm passionate about trying to get the word out that this is a kind of cancer that, for the large part, is in our control. And if we know what to do to protect ourselves, we are going to have a better chance at not getting skin cancer.
So you get the word out. You also do research grants for scientists and things.
Yes, and that's had great breakthroughs too because we're coming up on new drugs, new immunotherapy for melanoma. We are saving lives. We're prolonging lives. We have better quality of lives. And our real mission at the foundation is early detection, protection, and also treatments. And so the research dollars are great because they're really, really helping new inroads in treatment.
Yeah, you're not just out there being like, put on your sunscreen.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we get into skin cancer, can we talk about you?
Sure.
You sound like a badass back in the 80s studying
Very
skin cancer.
elegant lady. I wish you guys could see her. She's so elegant.
Oh, you sweet.
Okay, so you've been doing this for, I guess that makes it more than 30 years, about 30 years. Tell us, what is the weirdest thing you've removed from someone's body? And this, we're not talking about skin cancer yet. I just want to know because I love to pick the brains of derms.
Well, if any of you watch Dr. Pimple Popper, it's real. What's going on that show is what's happening any given day in my office.
I can't bear to watch.
And my husband's a plastic surgeon. We've worked together for 30 years, and that's what we see. Basically things like that, lumps, bumps, things that are ignored, and our share of skin cancer.
Got it.
Things that are ignored. I mean, I feel like that leaves it wide open.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll use my imagination. So do you ever, as somebody who's such an expert in recognizing issues, do you ever stop people on the street or be like, look, I don't mean to say something, but you really need to get that checked out?
I do, and I think it's an important thing. And there was a waitress once in Bethesda, Maryland, and I, of course, practice on Park Avenue in New York, so I didn't have any financial interest in telling her this, but I couldn't leave the meal without telling her that she had a really suspicious lesion on her neck and to please go take care of it. She did. It turned out to be melanoma.
Wow.
She thanks me to this day for saving her life, and I'm really glad that I did speak up.
Wow. And then, okay, just about skin cancer in general. You mentioned like in 1985, people thought the sun was great, and certainly before, people thought that it was healthy for you. You're sick, go out and get some sun. I understand that we know that it's bad now, but has it gotten worse? Like, has the sun gotten worse? Is this skin cancer and all of this disease, is it more prevalent today?
Yes, there's a lot of factors. First of all, with our pollution, the ozone layer is disappearing. That's the blanket of protection in the atmosphere. That's disappearing. We're to a large degree responsible because of pollution. The second thing is people are living longer. It's not unusual. People go to 90, 95. I have a few patients that are over 100. So the reality is that the longer you live, the more the chance that something will go wrong in the skin cells.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, okay, people who spent their lives working in the fields, people are still doing this,
Yes.
but when we were more like agrarian society, did they all have skin cancer at the age of 30 because they were outside? Or is it, well, now if you go outside and just hang out at the beach a couple of summers, you could get skin cancer?
Well, part is that they used to die of tuberculosis, other infections, internal cancers, so that they weren't living long enough.
Yeah.
But heart attacks. But we have a lot of great meds, as you know, to even help with that. But the second thing is that short bursts of bad sun are also bad. So even if you're not out there every day, taking that vacation and not really reapplying your sunscreen or going to the Hamptons and laying out or trying to get that tan or going to the tanning salon, these are all real bad things that are going to bump up the possibility of getting skin cancer.
Okay, so skin cancer, what is it? Because I think we all just think about, it's a weird-looking mole. But, what is happening to your skin cells that they're what's going on?
So we all have skin. Okay, it's the biggest organ in the body.
We'll start there. Everybody's on the same
Everybody's
page.
got skin. Got it. And we have a top layer called the epidermis, and underneath is the dermis. The epidermis is made up of cells. One of the cells are called squamous cells. That's what most of the epidermis is made up of. If one of the squamous cells has a little glitch, if the ultraviolet light comes down and somehow changes the DNA in that cell, it's going to mutate and it's going to start to proliferate and make more bad cells. And eventually it's going to make a growth. It's going to be a growth that looks like it's bleeding, oozing, it's crusty. It just won't heal. It looks like a sore for no reason. Then in the epidermis, we have basal cells. Basal cells are cells that are kind of at the junction of the epidermis and the dermis. They're the germinative cells. Well, you know what? If the ultraviolet light comes down on them and causes a little glitch or a little mutation in one of the basal cells, they proliferate unchecked, and you also can get a bump, a crusty area, and we call that a basal cell because it originated from one of the normal basal cells that we all have going wrong.
Okay.
The final skin type or cell type that you need to know about is the melanocyte. That's a cell that sounds really fancy, melanocyte, but it's the pigment cell.
We actually talked about those early on the episode.
That's
we called
funny.
them the ink cells, but you said
There
you made
you
it much
go.
more professional. Yeah.
And they give us pigment. And you know what? Those pigment cells are important because they do give us melanin, which is kind of protection from the sun. But sometimes the ultraviolet A or the ultraviolet B, the bad rays, can shine down and make a glitch once again. Oftentimes, maybe it was a bad sunburn, and it can then morph one of the melanocytes into proliferating and going wrong. Now, it might be a pre-existing mole that goes wrong, and it changes and it morphs into unchecked behavior that's potentially dangerous. Or it could be that nothing was wrong, but a normal melanocyte suddenly got a glitch and this occurred. And that's the scary thing because, one day you can just look down and there can be something that previously was not there. It may be black, it may be weird, or it might even be a pink bump that you never had before that's growing rapidly. And that would be what we call an amelanotic melanoma in some cases because it may lack pigment.
When you see all these different bumps, that's 3 types of skin cancers. Because you've been doing this, can you just be like, oh, I know right away, or it's always you're taking a biopsy? But can you tell just by looking what it is?
I'd say most board-certified dermatologists almost know right away.
Do we need to get naked right now and have a skin check? I don't know.
But the truth is, at least once a year, even if you've never had skin cancer, you should see the dermatologist and you should have the skin check. Because you know what? You can't see your backside. You can't see your back, your lower back. There are areas where the sun never shines that you really can't see on yourself. Your scalp is another area. So it's good to have an educated pair of eyes looking because that could save your life.
You mentioned a few different skin cancers. I'm sure it's different for all, but generally, if someone comes in and you see something odd, how do you treat it? First, you eyeball it, like you were just saying, but then what comes next?
So what comes next is some of us will use something called a dermatoscope, which is kind of like a glorified magnifying glass, but there are certain signs that we know to look for when we magnify. And then there's always what we call a skin biopsy. Now, it's not rocket science. It's not like it's not brain surgery. It's the simplest thing. It's putting a little numbing medicine right in the skin and taking a tiny little piece of skin. So it's very, very simple, and every dermatologist knows how to do that within a few minutes. And so it's a simple thing, and by putting that little piece of tissue in a bottle and sending it to a laboratory, such as maybe NYU or a laboratory that specializes in dermatopathology, will get a definitive diagnosis. And that's what we need to really be sure that that is a cancer or not.
But it's not like then you start taking pills. You got to cut it out, right? Or is that always the treatment?
Well, not always cutting. It depends.
That was my layman's term.
Maybe lasering, freezing.
All different methods. Basal
But you got to
cell,
get rid of it.
You have to get rid of it, and you have to kind of quote-unquote kill off the last bad cell. And you can do that sometimes with topical agents, depending if it's superficial. You can do that with lasering. You can do that with freezing, burning, scraping. Or the more precise way, if you really want to make sure that a squamous cell or a basal cell is fully removed, is to excise. And in many cases, Mohs surgery just means excising in thin layers while a technician is with you on the premises. So that's kind of like the highest cure rate because you're looking at all the margins. For melanoma, you want to make sure you got a safety margin, you got the whole thing out. And in some cases, if the melanoma turns out to be deep, then we have to look further. We have to do CAT scan. We have to do maybe a PET scan. We have to look at the lymph nodes because that's very important if the melanoma was deep. If it's a
So that means it's been around for a while. It means
probably,
it's old.
yes.
Okay.
Then you could get cancer in other parts of your body.
This is a highly specific question, but I think it's important. A lot of people don't protect, and myself included, like your eye area because you're putting on sunscreen and sometimes it's uncomfortable, stingy to put it there. You put on your sunglasses, you think you're all good. But I remember going to a beauty event and I was haunted. I just caught one glimpse of a slide, haunted by some of the Mohs surgeries around the eye. Can you just comment on what we can do to help protect ourselves? That's my biggest fear.
So eyelids are an area where we do see basal cell and squamous cell skin cancer. And I think that sunglasses is a key thing. And sunglasses today, the lenses are treated to block out the UVA, the UVB. If you use sunscreen, if you stick to ones that are what we call the mineral sunscreens, things like titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, they typically don't really burn or sting the eye. And if you don't know what to do, you can maybe even choose a children's sunscreen. Tends to be less stingy around the eyes. But it is important to really try to protect. And a visor, maybe a brimmed hat that kind of shields your eyes as well. All important tips.
You're talking about prevention, and obviously sunscreen's one of the ways. What are other ways you tell patients to prevent skin cancer? What can they do? What can our listeners do?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest sins is to forget to reapply. And I think that people have to realize if you're sweating, if you're swimming, if you're just outside and it's really, really hot, you're going to be sweating to a degree. Every hour and a half, 2 hours, you should really do a little check and maybe reapply if you're exposed. The other thing is there is nice clothing today that's lightweight, but it's been treated specially to protect against the ultraviolet rays. And so covering parts of the body would be a great thing to do. Avoiding peak hours. If you want to play tennis, that's great, but maybe go early in the morning, go later in the afternoon.
What are the peak hours?
Well, the peak hours maybe I'd say between like 12 and 4.
Okay.
The sun's pretty bad. It's high up and it's straight up and you get the direct rays.
Okay.
So you can do that. And hats and sunglasses and, trying to really be cognizant of the fact that you really should reapply and protect as much as possible with clothing.
One thing I have to ask you, we talked about this earlier in the year. Jen and I are in an office. A lot of our listeners, I'm sure they go to work and then they maybe go out for lunch or run a quick errand and then they leave at 6 o'clock, something like that. Do we have to reapply to go out for lunch?
I think on a normal day, if you put on a moisturizer that has at least an SPF 15, I think if you've had a history of skin cancer, you might want to bump that up and try to do an SPF of 30. That's a measure of how well it blocks the UVB, but it doesn't take care of the UVA. And the UVA can even go through the glass in your office if you happen to be lucky enough to have the corner office or a window. So you really need a broad spectrum sunscreen that'll block the UVA and the UVB. I don't think you have to reapply it every 5 minutes, but it's not a bad idea if you're going out to lunch to maybe even use one of those powders that they have today or a little bit more foundation to try to block, especially the face, because the rays will find you if you're running around, comes from above. And the most common place as a Mohs surgeon that I see skin cancer is really the nose because it's the central part of the face and the rays come down.
Can we talk about dermatologists and getting to see one? I heard recently this stat, I was so surprised, that only 4% of Americans have seen a dermatologist. A lot of communities don't have derms, or you don't have health care, so you can't get to the derm. If you have a weird thing on your skin, and I'm sure you've seen people have waited too long, is there any telemedicine services you can use to be hey, look at my mole?
Well, first of all, I'm proud to tell you that the Skin Cancer Foundation has a program called Destination Healthy Skin. We have a van, we have an RV with treatment rooms that goes across the country. And for anyone that can't afford or can't get in, the van hopefully will be coming to your area soon, and you could actually arrange to have a skin check on our van.
Like a free screening?
Yes.
Okay,
and we have
great.
volunteer dermatologists all over the country that are volunteering so that it's a pair of skilled eyes looking at you. The other thing that people can do is, yes, telemedicine is starting. One of the biggest problems with telemedicine is insurance reimbursement. But once they work the kinks out, I think that dermatology is very visual. And what we can at least do is look at the photo online, let's say, and say, yes, that has the warning signs. It's problematic enough that you need to come in and get the biopsy. We can't biopsy remotely, but we could certainly either calm somebody down or say, it looks problematic, get it checked out.
That's good to know. Do you know any telemedicine services? We can always look them up to put on our website, but are there multiple ones? Not all doctors do them, I imagine.
It's getting close, but for instance, I'm affiliated with NYU. There's one. I'm going to tell you it sounds like Criterion, but that may be the wrong name, so you got to look it up.
We'll look it up for sure. And then I wanted to ask you about, do you know what percentage of skin cancers have nothing to do with sun exposure? Because we beauty editors always hear about the famous case of Bob Marley. His skin cancer had on his toe, underneath his toenail, had nothing to do with the sun. It was genetic. Is that something we should all be worried about as well?
I think we don't really have a percentage. Maybe it would be 10% or less. The sun is responsible for probably 90% of skin cancers. But with that said, there are hidden parts of the body where we have melanin. Any place you have melanin or pigment is fair game for melanoma. You may not think about this, but in the retina and in the behind the iris of your eye has
melanin?
color. Yeah.
What about your hair? Can you get hair cancer?
Well, you can get it on the scalp, and it can be pretty deadly on the scalp because the way the vasculature is, the circulation, it can often spread to the brain from scalp. So we have to have a healthy respect for that. Around the anus, the vulva, our private
Which never
parts,
sees the sun.
never sees the sun, but yet a lot of us know if you look at your own body parts that even if you're a white person, Caucasian, you still have a little more pigment in those areas. And so that's fair game. And what happened, sadly, in the case of Bob Marley is that people of color, they have less pigmentation on their hands and on their feet. However, they still have pigment cells. And unfortunately, when it presents, they're not thinking about melanoma. They're thinking they have a fungus. They're thinking that they got tar on the beach.
He thought he hurt his foot from like a car accident, so he thought it was like a bruise.
So tragic. And sadly, if it's diagnosed late, that's the problem, and that's why you die, because it has the potential to spread to another part of the body. If you catch it early, 100% curable. That's why it's so important. If you get something funky and new and it's just not going away, you got to check it out.
Okay, this is a weird Jen question. Jess is going to kill me, but can people who have albinism get skin cancer if they don't have melanin?
Well, they don't have melanin, okay, but they still have skin. So there's fair game for basal cell carcinoma,
but not the
squamous cell
melanomas.
carcinoma. There's also something called amelanotic melanoma. So, albino, they have no inborn protection. So very often they have a ton of basal and squamous cell carcinoma.
What are some other myths that you want to dispel about sun protection or skin cancer? Because I feel like we hear them all day long. You must too, like old wives' tales that you're just like, oh, it's not true.
The sunscreen gives you cancer.
Well, yeah, that's the latest hot button, sadly. And all that is, just for you all to know, is that the FDA recently came out. There's an acronym. You may have heard of it, GRACE, G-R-A-S-E. It stands for generally kind of like accepted and safe and effective. And
generally recognized
as safe and effective. And they basically said, the bottom line is that there are two sunscreen ingredients right now that are titanium dioxide and zinc oxide that are safe. The FDA totally agrees. Those are physical blocks. They're mineral blocks. Go ahead and use them. We're not worried about them. Then there's a group that are dangerous. They're not GRACE, like PABA. They kind of took that off the market.
Yeah, they're all
ingredients
PABA
not
free
in there.
now.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you've got a group of 10 ingredients. Oxybenzone is the latest one that you've heard in the news, that the FDA says, look, we're absorbing some of it. They have data to show that if you're going to reapply sunscreen, as I told you to do, every hour and a half or 2 hours, sooner or later, it's going to go through the pores and you're going to absorb it. But absorbing it into your system does not mean it's dangerous.
Yeah.
The jury's out, and we have to do a few more studies before we're really going to know for sure what does it mean just because we're absorbing it. Because we absorb moisturizer. We absorb things that we put on our skin all the time. We absorb makeup.
So you cannot say, this definitely causes
cancer. We absorb lipstick. It's
How
on
many
our
times
lips.
a day do you have this discussion with a patient?
Well, a lot lately, because unfortunately, it's like the kids' game telephone. They heard it, and now it gets construed as, oh my God, I'm going to get cancer from the sunscreen. We at the foundation, at the Skin Cancer Foundation, and the FDA still recommend, please, use sunscreen. It's great if you can cover your body and use protective clothing and a hat, but still use sunscreen. We are not saying don't use sunscreen. It is certainly better than the risk of getting skin cancer.
So, side question, UV manicures, yay or nay?
I am a girl. I love great nails. I have little gloves. They just have the little cutouts for my fingertips. The gloves stay in the salon. They have my name on them. I advise every woman do that.
And as for sunscreens, like and just sun protection products, whether it's a little hat or whatever, what are some of your favorites, and what are some that you feel like your patients have been like, okay, I like this one?
Truth, honestly, I tell everybody, what do you like the smell and the feel of? It's true.
It's like, then you'll use it.
Right. I might like Ben & Jerry's chocolate ice cream. You might like Carvel. You might like,
What does Deborah like? Like, are you a Coolabar hat person like Jess? She loves those.
I love my Coolie Bar hat.
I think those are adorable and great. Yes, wonderful. And I think that in terms of putting something on your skin, I'm more of a lotion. I like lightweight. I don't like anything too tacky. I think I like sprays because they're quick, but you have to be careful that you don't miss areas and you don't do it in the wind and you don't inhale the spray.
Can you rub I put on the spray and then I rub it in. Is
Perfectly
that the normal?
fine.
Okay.
Perfectly
I see
fine.
people apply it like perfume, and I'm like, you're just like, it's not like a protective bubble around you. It's
So
Exactly.
funny.
land.
Or like it's just like flying behind them.
I've seen it on the beach. It's windy.
I know.
I always try and apply before I even get to the beach.
Yeah.
And that's very smart because
Well, thank you.
if you're using a, quote, chemical sunscreen, you have to do it at least 20 minutes to a half hour ahead of time. It's got to react with your what we call the stratum corneum, the top layer of your skin, to give you that protection. If you don't do that, it's kind of useless. So
That's
really
a good myth
important.
to dispel. If you get to the beach, put on your sunscreen, you have 15 minutes basically unprotected if you were using a chemical sunscreen.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good reason to use a physical blocker, I guess, too. So.
And there are other myths out there. People are really going to defend, well, we need the vitamin D. And you know what? We do need vitamin D, but we can get that from milk. We can get that from orange juices fortified. We can get that from fish, certain oilier fish, salmon, mackerel. There are other ways to get vitamin D.
I think it has to be wild caught, too. I've read that they're higher in vitamin D than
That's
farmed.
good. Or you can take supplements. You can take a little pill.
Last question. How do you keep your lovely white hair white? Because I have a lot of white hair and it gets yellow very easily. Since we're talking about sun and oxidation, you have like nice shiny white hair. How do you do
aren't
it?
you sweet? Well,
No, it's good.
There's like a
that's what I
highlight
want
on it. It's so
someday.
pretty.
Well, actually, they gave me the bad news. I can't do highlights anymore. It's a single process. But you wear a hat and you just try to.
Oh, so that's like like a platinum blonde, not a white?
It's a platinum blonde.
I should just let it come all in and be platinum blonde like Dr. Sarnoff.
It's so beautiful.
Aren't you guys sweet?
Yeah.
You both are beautiful. And I can see you protecting your skin. And you know what? The last thing I want to just say, it's not just for skin cancer. Part of my practice in the afternoon, I change my hat, and it's about beauty. It's about wrinkles. It's about fillers. It's about lasers. It's about neurotoxins. And you know what? If you protect from the sun, you're going to look 20 years younger than your friends. And that's the best advice I can give, because you would be amazed at people who say, but I don't sit in the sun. I never go out in the sun. And you know what? Your skin doesn't get crinkled and wrinkled by itself. And if you don't believe me, look at your tush. Look at your inner aspects of your arms.
Armpits are amazing.
Yeah,
My tummy.
aren't they?
Yeah, I'm
There you go.
not like a bikini person that often. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wear your sunscreen. Wear your Coolabar. All that good stuff.
All that good stuff. And you know what? Start embracing your beautiful color skin that
your
you're
melanin
born with.
as you have it. Nice.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Sarnoff.
Dr.
Thank you so
Sarnoff.
much. Thanks for having me. You guys were great.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
It's your reviews and feedback that help us make the podcast even better. Head over to iTunes to rate and review us, or email your thoughts to info@fatmascara.com.
We also want to answer your beauty questions and hear what products you love. To share a Razor One product review or to ask a beauty question, email us at info@fatmascara.
If you send it as a voice memo file, we can even share your voice on the podcast. You can also do that by leaving us a voice message. Our phone number in the United States is 646-481-8182.
Thanks so much for listening.